All right. Welcome to the podcast, Dad.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being on.
Great to be on. Great to be recognized.
A little appreciation goes a long way.
Absolutely. We all strive for that.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking today, this is the first day in a month that I've actually worn jeans.
Wow.
I've been wearing shorts for the past month because
Wow,
of
wow.
quarantine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What do you suppose that stems from? Because I've been running around with shorts and whatever I'm comfortable with is what I gravitate to. So.
Well, you almost have to wear jeans for work, right? To be a little more professional.
Yeah, absolutely. So
The only professionality I need is not having pillow marks on my face when I get up. So
and even that's optional. So
yeah, leaves me a lot of free room, you know. If I wake up at 2, shit, I almost don't even have to wear pants if nobody's home. I can just walk out, get some food, go back to my room.
Well, we do appreciate you wearing pants.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of downtime, though, I noticed. Yeah.
Oh, I bet, with this whole corona thing.
It's crazy. Yeah, because I just sit at home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now I work on this, but...
Yeah, well, this has kind of been a nice distraction for you anyway,
Yeah.
right?
And it's fun kind of trying to figure out, you know, what works, what doesn't work, what's best.
Yeah.
Kind of how to do it all. Put it all together, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the exciting part about it, I think, for you, is just being able to tweak it as you go. And, you know, so you've got that, fun aspect of it, I think, to learn as you go.
Yeah, it's like a learning process.
Yeah.
Like anything else, you know.
Yeah.
You're not going to be good at it the first time you do it.
Right.
But you practice, you put in work, and it
pays off.
Yeah, it gets better.
Constantly learning. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah, I've been having fun with it.
Yeah.
Especially when Sarah was on, it kind of opened my eyes. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a fun project.
Yeah, I caught that podcast. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
It's cool to see you guys and how you interact, and I think you guys are awesome. I think you both are awesome, you know. And when you kids are growing up, you know, and you'll learn this as you have your own kids, that, you know, that's kind of the relationship that you hope that your children end up evolving into, you know. But you do recognize, having traveled through that journey yourself, that it is a bit of a struggle, and we're all different people, you know. And so the two of you have been able to recognize that now as young adults, and I think from the outside looking in, it looks like one fantastic relationship that I hope carries you through a lifetime, because that's really what's important. It's those relationships with family and friends and things that really carry us through, you know, not only the great times, but the difficult times when we have to lean on one another. So
yeah, well, it's definitely a process. I mean, even growing up, Sarah and I were at each other's throats.
Oh yeah,
hitting each other, messing around, playing jokes. I thought I was adopted because of Sarah for what, 2 years out of my life. So it's definitely grown, and I think her going off to college was probably the best thing that could have happened, because her not being around all the time opened my eyes, and I was like, whoa, like I miss her a lot. Like even just joking around with her, playing pranks on her, like I missed our interactions with each other.
Yeah.
And you growing up with 6 siblings, I mean,
yeah, the dynamics are just incredible when you look back, and that's why I appreciate all the practical jokes that go on between the two of you, and you can just imagine with 6 other siblings the stuff that would go on, and some of it, you know, when you look back, you go, wow, that kind of stung, and
like what?
But, you know, just practical jokes, you know, setting somebody up or scaring them, or you know, just just doing things to irritate them. You know, when you look back, you go, oh geez, well, I'm kind of sorry about that. I one that comes to mind that kind of got my your Aunt Carol, who's couple years older than me, and I was pretty young. I was probably still in grammar school, but anyway, we had rabbits at the time, and so we'd have to clean. You know, my brother and I, our job was to clean the rabbit poop, essentially, right? And so there were so many rabbits and a limited amount of space that we were constantly digging holes in the yard, and then, you know, 4 months later, you're digging up the same hole to stuff more rabbit poop into.
Yeah.
So this one time, Carol had ticked me off about something. Oh, she was supposed to help me is what it was. She was supposed to help me clean up, but she was dating some guy, or they weren't like officially dating or whatever. So I'm back there sweating like the
Nobody's
Dickens, right?
business.
Like trying to clean this up, and I think my brother's was working or something, and so I'm doing the haul here, ticked off because my sister's not helping out, right? And she's sitting she's sitting on the front porch, with this pseudo boyfriend or whatever you can call him, because they're both pretty young at that point too, but. And for whatever reason, I had a wheelbarrow full of crap, and I just parked it right in front of them.
Oh man,
As I was cleaning up the poop, I just parked this fresh pile of
kind of a romance killer right there.
rabbit poop right in front of them for the proper ambiance as they
Oh
needed.
man,
And just
way to
walked
set the
off.
mood.
Walked off.
That's
So
good.
it's just things like that, that you look back on, and I'm sure I paid for it many times
Oh yeah,
over, and but that's
that's all part of it.
that's part of growing up and learning that and appreciating one another,
Yeah,
so
I can only
yeah.
imagine because, God, Sarah and I were doing stuff like that all the time, and where there's 7 of you guys, like,
Yeah,
whoo.
you had to be on your toes.
Yeah,
Let me
I'm
tell you
sure
what. Let me
Lito and
tell you
Lita
what.
appreciated
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I think, like when mom asked, your mom, of course, asked us what we want for dinner. I'm
You're like,
always stumped because, quite frankly, I've never had that option. It was always you ate what was in front of you. So when you're feeding 7 kids, you're going to be a short order cook. So
yeah.
so mom had to she'd fix a meal, and I'll tell you what, if you're hungry enough, you'll eat just about anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember you telling us that, like, on the occasions when you guys would go out to get food, it was never like, oh, what does everybody want? It's like, oh, we'll have 7 cheeseburgers, 7 Cokes, and 7 orders of fries.
Yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
what you got.
Yeah, on a very rare occasion, we'd go to there was an A&W at the time, still here in town, and we would all pile up into the International Travel Hall. You can just 3 rows of seats, and we're jammed in there, and we'd cruise over to A&W, and we couldn't go through the order form.
You'd be there all day.
Dad would roll down the window and just say, hey, bring us 9 hamburgers
Yeah.
and 9 root beers, and that was the extent of it. But it was always kind of funny to be sitting there while we're waiting for our food, and people next to us, you could see them counting us all in the car,
In the
trying to
car.
figure out how many were in there. So, yeah, never a dull moment.
Yeah, I bet.
And yeah, so but as I've grown older, I've learned to appreciate alone time. I think
I bet.
that takes a little bit to get used to, but once you appreciate that and can actually take a moment and sit down and meditate, if that's the thing you do, or just have a few minutes to sit down during the day and just be alone, is
important.
it's a jewel. It really
Yeah,
is.
you probably didn't get a lot of that growing up, huh?
You don't, because there's always something going on. You're sharing bedrooms, sharing clothes, sharing arguments, getting drug into many arguments,
Yep.
and trying to keep the peace sometimes. And so, yeah, it's always, it was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it's difficult to compare it to anything else because you didn't experience it. I wouldn't know what it was like to be a single child. I mean, I dreamt about it, but never experienced it. So,
Yeah.
but I think of knowing people that are single children or come from small families. In the stories you hear, I'm happy that that I came from a large family.
Yeah, it seems like it's rare that being a single child works out in the kid's favor.
Yeah. I think there's there's studies on everything anymore, but I think growing up in a large group, you learn, if not learn, you're forced to compromise. Compromise, I think, is the huge one, because nobody ever gets their way 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped me through life because in negotiating business transactions or whatever, I'm always negotiating, and so and it's becomes an art form, and it comes easy because that's what you've done your whole life. You're always compromising. and you always want everybody, ideally, you know, in those situations, you want everybody to be to come out a winner, you know, and it is possible, you know, to have a win-win situation. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'd imagine that being valuable in business, especially.
yeah,
Just the ability to talk to people, compromise, and just hear their point of view. You
yeah,
know what I mean? To some extent.
yeah,
And I don't think, yeah, I can't imagine that um, single children really get that, you know, because it's kind of just you.
right,
And kind of what you were saying about being left with your thoughts. It's interesting to hear you say that because growing up, like, I always felt like I had a balance of that because I could always interact with you guys, but there was always so much space that, you know, if I needed my time alone, I could always go back to my room or go, you know, go to the gym and just be with my thoughts and have that kind of balance because it was
yeah,
only me and Sarah growing
right,
up. You know what I mean?
right.
And I felt like that was pretty valuable because if you're bombarded with constant information and constant people all around you, it can kind of get a little much sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, for me, it's kind of come full circle because, you know, growing up, you're in that environment where there's a lot going on, you know, between, you know, the immediate family, and then mom ran a daycare in addition to that, as if there wasn't enough kids anyway.
Yeah.
And we had paper routes and jobs. And so it was complete total chaos, I'm sure, from the outside, you know, but it was an organized chaos, I imagine, for the parents. But then, so you learn that appreciation when when you actually become an adult and have that space and can collect your thoughts,
Yeah.
and maybe
reflect
maybe
on it.
reflect on the on the previous 16, 17, 18 years of your life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but I've noticed now, though, for me, in the whole social media thing, because I don't do a lot of social media. As a matter of fact,
You don't do any.
I don't do any social
Yeah.
media. But even with, you know, the internet and having to be on the computer for work and how everybody communicates anymore, it's I find it, you know, exhausting. You know, to get on the computer to try to go through and read emails. Now you feel as if, or at least I do feel as if, that you are just constantly bombarded with advertisements or people wanting your time or your help or whatever the case may be, and it's exhausting. So for me, I found just coming home and leaving the phone in the corner of the room and forgetting about it, and not getting on the computer at all in the evenings is actually really relaxing. And
Yeah.
it's gotten to the point where I don't really enjoy getting on the computer and having to go through emails. You know, it seems like, I'm sure you do the same. We all do anymore. You spend more time hitting delete, 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 delete than
Oh, yeah.
anything else. You know.
Side note, I think it was a couple of days ago, I went through and tried to clean out my emails. I had 25,000 emails I went through,
Yeah.
and I guarantee 24,900 were all just ads from businesses
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? It's just spam
Yeah.
that you don't even need.
Yeah.
Do you ever get the itch to be on social media just to like check it out and see what everybody's talking about? Or do you think that that's like opening Pandora's box? You know?
For me, I don't really see the attraction. Because, you know, what you hear, I get enough of it through mom, you know, because she's on she does the social media thing and kind of feeds me information or shows me stuff. But, you know, and I think you know this more than I do, of course, is that a lot of that is it's just smoke and mirrors, you know, because people always are going to show you their best side, and they're always going to pretend to be something they're not, and all of that. And I think, you know, the friends that people collect on the internet just seem silly to me.
They're not really your friends. 90% of them.
They seem silly to me, you know. And there's been studies about friends and how many you can that's my phone, I guess.
Rookie
Sorry
mistake.
about that.
It's fine.
So it's background music.
Yeah, I like it.
So I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, you know what? I read in a book here recently about just that, and that humans are only capable of establishing, I think, a maximum of 7 really close friends.
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
because the reality is you don't have, unless you just devote your entire day to your friends, and don't have a job and don't do anything else, because it does require some time.
It's exhausting. You have to put
Yeah,
in the work to maintain those relationships.
Exactly. And so for me, that one-on-one or those group, actually being in front of somebody and talking, because we say so much through our eyes and through our mannerisms, and the way we shift in a chair and things when you're having a conversation with somebody, that a big part of the conversation isn't spoken. It's in how we react to to that conversation. So, and I think as humans we need all of that to really connect. So I don't see that happening on social media. I'm not I'm not knowledgeable in social media at all.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the big arguments against social media, is you're not getting those, visual cues.
Right.
And you can't really hear somebody's voice. You're not getting those inflections of like, oh, this person's mad, or oh, they're sad. Like, you can't get that when it's, 280 characters on a computer screen.
Exactly.
Like, how do you tell?
Exactly. And I know for me, part of, initially getting on the computer and doing emails and everything, and learning what is, correct and incorrect, I've learned that you can really misinterpret,
Oh, yeah.
or be misinterpreted, on what you're trying to come across as, and so that, I think that's kind of a dangerous road, because then you're thinking, oh, this guy was all pissed off at me because, it was all capitals. And that's something I experienced, initially, years ago when I first got on the computer. I may have just had the capital locked in or whatever, and so I responded with all capital letters. And I want to say somebody, when I ended up months later talking to somebody, and that conversation was brought up, and they said, "Oh, we thought you were pissed off because they were all capital letters." And I go, "No," and they said, "Well, all capital letters means you're yelling."
Yeah, you have to keep up on all the lingo and stuff for them.
Yeah. And so just the other day, your sister told me that, when you're responding to a text, you shouldn't just respond with one word like K, because
people get mad at that.
Because apparently people get ticked off at me. So that's just a whole other, form of communication that, quite frankly, maybe I don't quite have developed. I haven't developed the skills for it yet, and it seems odd, but that's.
Is it kind of crazy? Because when you were growing up, it was all 90% of it was all in person. Yeah, you had the paper, you had television, but that's basically in person to some extent. Like, you can get those cues, and now a lot of it's digital.
Yeah, and I think with with that whole communication thing and how much information's out there and how much privacy is, I'm still old school where privacy was kind of a thing, and now quite frankly, there's no privacy, and everybody puts everything out there, and it just seems, well, it doesn't leave anything to the imagination. It doesn't, quite frankly, I guess if a person was on social media constantly and they were a pseudo friend of yours, or maybe a little bit more than a Facebook friend or whatever, and you guys are following each other, and you're posting everything and he's posting everything, and then all of a sudden you guys run into each other at the store,
what do you do?
Just like that, the conversation stops, because I know what you were doing yesterday, and oh, by the way, there it is. It doesn't
right?
It doesn't give you anything to share, and then when you do share, is it real? Is it not real? Are people being genuine, or it just seems odd, an odd form of communication.
It seems like we're building these fake relationships.
Yeah.
Like, it's all surface level, right? But people want more. Like, back in the day, your movie stars, your famous people, you only consumed their content, right? So you only consumed what they wanted you to. Their songs, their movies. But now, if you want to stay relevant, you've got to post daily. Like, you have to take little highlights of every day of your life and put them out there, and people just consume it. And they keep wanting more.
Right.
Where's the pushback? Where do you stop that? You know what I mean?
Right.
I've heard people say that they think that this is all going to get to a point where everyone's just going to be, basically streaming their lives for people to watch.
Right.
Which one is, that's...
What is that about?
Right?
And it puts a lot of pressure on. I mean, if there's a camera in your home and you're constantly being videotaped, it puts another element of pressure in your life, right? That you don't, you obviously you can't do something wrong, because then it's going to
It's
all be
creating
on
that
them.
air of perfection,
Right,
to
right.
some extent.
And then all of a sudden, whatever forum you're on, all of a sudden you have the vast group of people out there that now are all of a sudden critiquing you.
Yeah.
And it's so critical not to listen to those voices, because I mean, the reality is it's what you think of yourself that really matters. But people are so in tune with what everybody else is saying about them that that I think that loses something. That loses the value of what's really important. It's a person has to develop in the sense that what's important is who you are and who you believe you are, and that that interpersonal journey that we all are on or should be on, and you want to grow from those experiences. Because if you're always going through life and living your life based on what other people think of you or what they're going to say about you, you're going to have a long, difficult, hard life. And the real journey is that internal journey to discover who you are, and to accept yourself for who you are, and to be, to look at yourself in the mirror, really, and to be really happy with who you are. And you get to a point in your life where, you don't give a crap what somebody says. That's their opinion, and they bring in a lot of garbage with that opinion, and it's impossible to live your life based on what everybody else is saying. And I think people try to do that. I mean, to me, that seems exhausting.
Well, I think the trend is definitely in that direction more and more, right? I mean, I think that's one of the aspects of like cancel culture and why it works. Because like there are instances where comedians put out jokes because they're comedians, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're throwing out jokes, and some of them are a little risky, but that's kind of their job, is to push the boundary a little bit. And then all of a sudden everyone turns against them, and boom, they're just gone, right?
Right. I think that's
positive feedback reinforcement.
Yeah, I think it can completely end somebody's career, by what you do or what you did, obviously, sometimes decades prior.
Yeah, it's all out there now.
That comes back to bite you. And that's another thing I read years ago, was when this whole social media was coming up and everybody was posting everything and everybody's information's out there. They were talking about the possibility that the younger generation is going to have to change their name 2 or 3 times, because you're never going to be able to get a job, or all this stuff's going to follow you wherever you go, and you're going to be constantly judged by that. And what you do, obviously what you do when you're a young adult is different than when you're another adult, because you learn things, and you learn what you don't want to do and what you don't want to represent yourself. But if you take an adolescent doing things that their brain hasn't fully developed, and then all of a sudden that's going to follow them their whole life, because now all of a sudden you can pop up a video when they were doing something absolutely ridiculous, that they wouldn't do today, but yet it's them, and then they're judged by all of that. So I think it makes it really challenging for your generation, and younger generations to have to battle with. And I don't know if eventually people are going to start to recognize those difficulties that that social media brings, and then maybe it'll come full circle and go the other direction, where people are going to stop. I'm hearing people are falling out of Facebook now and not doing the Facebook thing, but I know other things are popping up. But quite frankly, I would think that the trend is going to be the other direction, where people are going to realize, you know what, I want to get back a little bit more of my privacy. And no, I don't need to know what everybody's doing and what color the vegetables they're eating that night, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, why is that important?
Why do people care? That's what always gets me. Like,
why do people care?
Yeah.
Why do people care, and why are people so interested? I understand the whole movie star thing, and people want to find out more information. But I'm thinking, you know what? You take it for what it is. They're a movie star, they're on screen, or whatever the case may be, and that's what you get from that. And I don't see the attraction of diving deeper and finding out who they're having a relationship with, or
Yeah.
how many kids they have, and what their kids' names are. I mean,
Like, how does that affect you?
how does that even affect you, and why do you put that kind of energy into it? There's so much more out there to put, positive energy into.
Yeah.
That finding out somebody's background or taking the time to try to bash them, on social media just seems pointless to me.
I think that's what worries me the most, is the aspect that in today's society, it's like we're not allowing people to grow. Because even the person who you are yesterday, you're going to make mistakes that you wouldn't make tomorrow.
Right.
And the only way you really know that is by making the mistake, right?
You're right.
And now every mistake, every act is documented. And we're not letting people grow. We're taking, like you said, things people did 10 years ago and being like, you did this. Doesn't matter that it was 10 years ago. You did this. So
Right.
now you got to pay the piper for that.
Right.
Which is crazy. I mean, that was one of my big fears about doing this podcast. And I think what held me back for so long is I was worried. I don't really like putting stuff out there because I've always been a little cognizant of that to some extent,
Right.
And I know that there's going to come a point in time when I say some stupid shit on this podcast and people are going to get pissed.
Right.
But obviously you can't live in fear of that, but it's something you got to be aware of, because
Right.
that's where we are today.
Sure. If it's something you really enjoy and it's something that you feel good about, there's going to be people that are going to give you negative feedback and that kind of thing. But you know what?
Can't listen to it.
Yeah, just let it roll off your back like, water off a duck.
Yeah.
Right? So it's been a different world we're living in today.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That human connection. And that's one of the reasons why I love, that we've been able to travel.
Yeah.
And I know that was a big part of your life growing up. Like, you guys would go to Mexico, you'd go all over.
Right. And I think that's important. I think children today and every generation should have that opportunity to travel the world, really, to some extent.
Yeah.
And be able to see that what they've got, so they can appreciate, this country. It's a wonderful country, obviously, and it's a very rich country. But I don't think a lot of people understand the comparisons between, what poverty really is like, and the struggles that some people have. Just, we worry about the color of car we're going to buy, or
Yeah.
or the new shirt we're going to buy. Where there are millions of people that are worried about what they're going to eat, and those very basic needs. And I think when you're exposed to that and you see that, it gives you a greater appreciation of living here in the United States, but also keeps things a little bit in perspective that, the materialistic aspect of things really isn't that important.
Mm-hmm.
Having the designer tennis shoes, is it that
The
important?
Gucci belt.
The Gucci belt or whatever the case may be, is it really that important in the greater scheme of things?
Yeah, it's interesting that we attach so much value to a brand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
I think it is. And I don't know what that is, and I'm sure there's studies on it, but I think it's that drive that people want to be noticed, and the importance that's their driving force, is they want to be noticed.
And it's almost like a clique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone wants to be a part of a group. And if you've got that, if you've got an iPhone, then you're in the iPhone group, and you're with those people. If you've got, some Jordans on, then, oh man, you ball, you're with those people. Like, you've got that clique.
Right.
It's almost like you want to try to find your spot, your place to belong. But if you've got some freaking jeans from a thrift store, you get ridiculed for some of that
maybe
stuff,
that's the social pressures, that you get, or that, that you feel you got to do that.
Which is crazy. As long as you have pants on, I think we should be fine, right?
Hey,
as
I'm
long
happy.
as you're not streaking in the street, who cares what you're wearing?
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so much value in it.
There's so much value in it, and more importantly, I think as advertising and marketing and all of that, that's what you want to create. You want to create that. Hey, man, if you don't have this latest pair of Jordans here, baby, you're sucking eggs. You have no business being on the court, right?
It's impressive that they do that.
They do a phenomenal job of marketing, and we're constantly being bombarded by that. So probably the best thing that we can do, all of us as individuals, is maybe just unplug a little bit more.
I think traveling helps that. You
It
know, because
does.
you get
Yeah.
out and you see that the world is not social media. The world is not the United States. You know, there's actual people out there who are genuine and have stories and have lived lives and interesting takes on things. And you get all that you wouldn't get on social media. And you don't get if you just stay in the US. And I feel like it's like that for every country. You know, you got to get out if you have the opportunity to just dip your foot in that pond for a second and be like, whoa, like
Yeah.
I would have never thought about it like that, or I would have never been immersed in this culture and I would have never seen these people experience this way of life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I want to live in Mexico for a few months.
Right.
Because I just want to, like, obviously we come from that culture, like that's our heritage, and always felt a little disconnected from that.
Right.
Except for when we travel down there, then I feel like, okay, like I
Yeah.
get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I want to experience that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
to some extent. I
Absolutely.
think that's important. And you did that. You traveled for a few months, didn't you? When
Yeah.
you got out
Well,
of high school.
when I got out of high school, I traveled all over down there for with an uncle. Probably, I don't know, 5-6 months. We traveled around just with a little, one change of clothes and a backpack,
That is so cool.
and just kind of cruised around.
Yeah.
It was quite an experience. I saw so many different sides to that country down there, and such diversity
Mhm.
that I never really. I mean, there were towns we'd go into where most of the people spoke French, and there are these little pockets of communities in these remote areas that it's just unbelievable. Yeah, yeah, and I think you find that in countries all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
If you stay, if you can get away from the touristy spots, because there's nothing worse, I think, than to travel to a country and then, if you're from the United States and then you land in this country and all you're surrounded with are, people from
Yeah,
the United
Americans. Yeah.
States. And the only difference that you brought along is you're at a beach and the sun's out.
Yeah.
But in all
You
reality,
look around and everyone's just like you, and it's like, what is happening here?
Having the same conversations,
Mhm.
and then
Same
the one
problems
the
in
one that
life.
always gets me is to travel to a different country and then listen to music from the United States. It's
Right.
like, wait a minute.
What is going on here?
I could have stayed at home for this.
Yeah.
Let's experience some of the culture.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of countries, because those tourist dollars are so important, really cater to the country that's visiting them the most,
Mhm.
and try to provide that atmosphere that people are comfortable with.
Yeah, it's like they want to make you feel at home, but the whole point of traveling is to not be at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's missed a lot.
I think what's really cool about the US, and I'm sure other countries are like this too, is you can travel. I mean, the West Coast is so different than the East Coast. Like I think that's one of the things that we forget about a little bit,
Yeah.
is how diverse our country is too, to some extent. Like even just getting out of your state, you're like, holy crap, I'm on a different planet. A little bit.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really cool aspect too.
Yeah.
I'm really
yeah.
fortunate that glad that I was able to go back east, because that's a whole different ballgame out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Different mentality, different, scenery. A lot of history back there.
Yeah.
It makes California look awfully young when you visit the East Coast. So,
Mhm.
yeah, what a great experience for you. To be
Yeah,
out
I think it's
there
really
and,
cool.
experience a lot of that and
See the architecture and
yeah, and just the people that have grown up there.
Yeah.
The friendships that you develop out there, and the way they see things a little bit differently than we do here. So
yeah, it's just like a different group of people out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially from California. I feel like everyone here is way more laid back, and I know everybody says that, and I never really like got it until
Yeah.
I went out there, and those people are like moving 24/7. It's like, if you're not doing something, like get out of the way, because I'm gonna go through you. Like I got shit to do today. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you're just
yeah.
like walking around through the park, and they're just like, I gotta go, and it's like, oh, okay, like my bad.
yeah,
It's crazy to see that different mentality of like, you just gotta keep moving. Yeah.
exactly.
And especially with the snow, and it's just like people slide down a hill in their car, hit the bottom, just keep driving. I didn't almost just crash. Like, we're gonna keep going. I gotta get places. It's like, what just happened? It's incredible
Yeah.
to see that. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially the climate we're used to here. And it's when you go out there and I have a ton of respect for people that live out there through the winter.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different kind of cold out there.
Mhm.
My God. Yeah. But they live and work in it, and it's like
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things. I know we were talking about how, some places have like tornadoes and some places have earthquakes, and then they've got the snow. I guess
Right.
anywhere you live, like you've got to pick the demons that you're living with. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Would you rather have snow or would you rather have a tornado blow through your town once every few years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd almost pick the snow.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. You want to think about that kind of things. for
Yeah,
sure.
right?
Unless you can bounce around the country and, you just have a stack of money with homes everywhere, and you can always be in search of the sunshine or something, So, yeah.
Did you always want to live here in Eureka?
No. I never thought I would come back. I mean, I was living in, Southern California for a while and going to school down there. And yeah, I had no intentions of coming back. Just one of those things that evolved. And, I had an opportunity to take over, the family business and did that for a bit and then got back out of it and did construction and then came back to it and then met your mom, of course. And,
Yeah.
the rest is history. But it is a great area to raise kids, and it's pretty laid back. Climate is phenomenal. It's never too hot, never too cold. But we can go places that are get as warm as you want it to be within an hour or so.
Yeah, you could drive inland and then
Yeah.
you're in 80-degree weather.
Exactly. So and living on the coast, I am definitely attracted to the ocean. So I think I'll always live near an ocean. It's just there's something about it that I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
So I'll always do that. But I don't know if long term we'll end up staying here, but we'd love to travel a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's all part of life, right? You get a little
Yeah.
too comfortable and then you get complacent and then you got to switch it up,
Switch it up.
Keep
Switch it up.
keep your body guessing in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep seeing new stuff. Keep growing. All
Mhm.
those experiences I think are important.
Yeah. Why did Lito and Lita, your parents, why did they choose Eureka? Why did they come here?
Well, the story as it was told to me was they came to visit an uncle and aunt that my dad had lived here in Eureka that were originally from Mexico.
Okay.
So their plan was to come here, visit with them for a while, and then they were going to go visit other relatives in LA. When they got here, they just enjoyed it. They had a great time. They traveled around the community a little bit, and within it was kind of crazy. My uncle at the time worked for the railroad.
Okay.
And so my dad showed up, and within about 4 days, my uncle said, "Hey, you want to make a little extra money while you're here? We need some help out here at the railroad," and it went from there.
Wow.
So after arriving here, within a week, my dad had a job with the railroad. Within a year, they bought their first house. Within I want to say within the next it might have been between 5 and 10 years, they became U.S. citizens. And he came from a really strong work ethic, and had no qualms about doing anything. So
Yeah.
and here, at the time, the railroad was pretty strong. Of course, the timber industry was huge. There were mills all over the place. So it employed a lot of people. It was easy to get it. If you worked, hard, you could get a job anywhere.
Mhm.
And those jobs were great jobs back
Yeah.
then. So
I wish I never really got to talk to Lito on like a deep level and get to like experience his life and stuff. But from the stories I've heard, he was absolutely the hardest working person ever. Next to you, you are incredibly hardworking too. And I'd assume you got that from him.
yeah, absolutely. When he was, he lived in Mexico in the time when there was, the revolution going on, and so his family was pretty well off at the time, and but there were a lot of kidnappings going on down there where people were being, wealthy families were being kidnapped, either the child or the parent or something would be kidnapped for, ransom essentially. And the revolution's kind of going on, so there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of people being killed for their money and possessions and things like that. So they ended up moving from a small town where they were pretty well off to a larger city, to Guadalajara, because of just that. They left in the middle of the night because they were looking to kill or kidnap my grandfather. So
Oh wow.
they slipped away, and then they had to start all over. So my dad at 13, he had 5 sisters. So at 13, he had to basically get a job. He was the only boy. My grandfather went back to Mexico to try to, salvage what he could, or not back to Mexico, but back to that town, in Mexico, and to try to salvage what he could. And so Dad was forced to work. And so from the time he was 13, he worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he never finished high school, and worked ever since.
It's incredible because most people, I mean, just having to work from a young age, I feel like that's lost on a lot of people now. But he built, I mean, most people, if you have something and you lose it, like they're crippled by that. Most people don't have the strength to get up from that because it's hard,
Right.
And Lito did that once to get to Guadalajara, and then he came here and built, a pretty good life for himself and kind of pursued the American dream to a lot of extents,
Yeah.
Was that his intention when he was visiting around the U.S.? Did you think that he would come and live here, or was he just visiting?
No, he was visiting. They were, at the time they were kind of in search. He was recently married, of course, and then they were kind of in search. At that time there was still a lot of unrest in Mexico, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of corruption, and he didn't really like that. He had businesses in Mexico. He started a paint business, and there was always something going on. He'd have to pay somebody off or something, and the lifestyle just wasn't conducive to what he liked.
Yeah.
So when he came here and noticed how everything was, and it seemed like a more honest and hardworking society, I think that kind of attracted him to that.
Yeah.
And he stayed. Yeah, stayed. Never looked back. I don't recall him ever regretting having moved here.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because
Yeah.
didn't he build up? They built up a life in Guadalajara. I mean, it had been a few years before they moved here, right?
Yeah. They had a ranch. They were young and struggling and starting out. And
Yeah.
they had a little small ranch, and he also started a paint business where they were actually manufacturing paints, for commercial and residential, and that was going well for him. But it just didn't seem right, that climate, and just the corruption, really.
Has that gotten better? Have you noticed in your lifetime?
No.
Not at all.
No, I don't think it's gotten much better. When I traveled around there, they're like anything else. It's not completely, corrupt like everybody you come across is corrupt and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
No. But there are pockets, of corruption, in government and things like that, and sometimes it's about getting that government job, not just because of, it's a good paying job. Most of them are not, but it's the amount of money you can
Get on the
skim
side.
off of Joe Public, So, yeah, I think that still exists, unfortunately. And then, of course, now with the drug activity going on, I think it's just exacerbated it. There's some areas down there that I wouldn't recommend traveling.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because they're gonna, it's threatening for a U.S. citizen to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but the violence that's going on, and you getting the chance of you getting caught in the crossfire are greater. So
Yeah.
a lot of those border towns, you want to be cautious. They're moving drugs back and forth, and you can't really blame them too much. They're struggling trying to make a living, and we seem to want the drugs here. So
Yeah.
if there's no demand for them, they wouldn't be doing it. So
One of the arguments people like to make is if you just legalized all drugs, let everyone do crack or whatever they want to do, that's going to cut that out from Mexico. Do you think that happened?
I don't know. I think there'd be a lot of wasted people on the streets.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like Vegas 24/7.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to have laws to protect ourselves from ourselves. So,
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things. I don't know if it'll ever. I mean, here you go. Here, just in this community, you talk about the pot and the legalization of pot and where that stemmed from.
Well, even just the heroin, like
Yeah.
you can go dump your needles on any sidewalk now
Yeah.
because they've got those disposable boxes.
Yeah.
That seems a little crazy.
So what's the answer? The argument is, you got to provide a clean needle so we don't have more hepatitis spread or whatever the case may be. So, it's a bit of a challenge trying to.
To be fair, I mean, though, they let people smoke cigarettes, which are pretty bad, right? Like, you get to make that choice. But then, I mean, not that you'd ever really want to do heroin, but, like, why draw that conclusion there, right? I mean, if both of them are going to kill you, right, which they do, is it just because cigarettes have been more accepted in our society that it's like, oh, yeah, you see somebody walking down the street smoking, it's no big deal. But it's like, that's going to kill you. I mean, you've got a limited lifespan for that.
Right. Well, I'm not a specialist in the drug industry, but I would think that the effect of a cigarette on you is far less than heroin.
So it's like a duration thing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think people can function. I think the average bear can probably function really well if they have a cigarette and then get back to work, as opposed to doing heroin and then getting back to work. You know what I'm saying? In any given day. So I think the fact is they both can kill you, right?
Yeah.
But one, you may have a little harder time functioning under normal circumstances.
So it's like a productivity type thing.
Yeah, I would think.
I get that.
Which is kind of the same thing with pot, I think it depends on the person, but I don't know if you want, somebody stoned, running, some pretty intricate machinery or some heavy equipment or something.
Or driving down the road.
Yeah, their judgment may be impaired a little bit. So,
but that's kind of like alcohol, you don't want somebody
absolutely
plastered driving down the road at 3:30 when you're picking up your kids. Cause
that's why we kind of frown on people drinking on the job.
Yeah.
So. Because we don't want to, it affects the safety of everybody else that's working, within the,
Yeah. Have you ever had an employee come to work for you drunk?
I've actually had an employee on lunch pop a beer.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that takes some balls. In front of your boss to be able to do that?
Well, it wasn't directly in front of me. They were kind of in the little break room, and I just heard the popping of a soda can. And I don't know if the sound is different. Maybe I'm more in tune with a beer can
you just
popping.
Noticed, yeah.
And I'm going, whoa, is it 5 o'clock already? I just heard the sound of the pop, the can being opened.
Yeah.
And I walked over there just kind of calmly to see what was being talked about and what was being consumed. And sure enough, he's drinking a Bud, and I'm going, whoa, what's going on? Oh, I just having lunch with a beer.
Like nothing.
No, we don't do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's
people have different attitudes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure, if you drink on the daily or whatever, or within reason,
mm-hmm.
having a beer for lunch isn't going to affect you, to the extent, that's going to affect your job too much. But, you got to,
You can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And I can't pay people to sit around and drink. Especially if I'm not drinking.
So. Yeah, right?
Take that personally.
Yeah, come on.
No.
Wow.
There's a time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, you kind of got to keep that away from work.
Yeah.
Be a
So
good job though if you could crack a cold one with each lunch. Come on.
it would be, but I would think
Oh
productivity
yeah,
would diminish.
yeah. You're not gonna get great returns on that
Yeah,
business.
exactly. So
That's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't. I mean, speaking of which, actually, have you noticed? I mean, obviously, the Corona thing plays
Yeah.
an impact in every business. Have you noticed a hit from that?
we haven't noticed a hit because I think we're just so diverse, in what we do. But I have noticed, people that are just really cautious, which I don't blame them, but I think that consumer confidence is going to be, it's going to take a while to come back, and I think that's going to be the biggest problem, is building that that confidence in the consumer,
Yeah.
and I think that crosses the board. I talk to friends that are in real estate and that kind of thing, and they're noticing the same thing. You can kind of create a pseudo safe environment, but people are are scared by all this, and a lot of it's valid. A lot of it is media hype, of course, and it's easy to scare a group of people when you start seeing when you start watching the news
Yeah.
for any length of time. Granted, it's not as severe here as it is in other areas, especially like New York,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the fear is across the board, and I think coming across people like that, and the average consumer is affected by that, and I don't think that happens. I don't think that's going to change overnight.
Oh no.
You're not gonna. The economy isn't gonna go gangbusters in 2 months just because now, what, we can go outside.
Mm.
So that it's gonna be a bit to get that consumer confidence back.
What do you think this looks like in relation to like the 2008 crash?
Well, I think I think it's I think it's it's different in the sense that we have kind of a 2008. We could pinpoint problems in the economy, what was going on, and that kind of thing. Where this is kind of a hidden enemy, so to speak. So it's different in that sense. And so it's not like something like if you
You
came
can't
across,
point it out and be like,
you
"This
can't
is what
point
we
it
have
out.
to
So like,
fix."
let's say all of a sudden there's somebody, years ago they were poisoning, what was it, aspirin or Tylenol or something like that, right? You don't remember this.
They were what?
Yeah, they were
Poisoning, like
yeah,
Advil and
it was like the capsule of Tylenol. I want to say it was Tylenol. I might be incorrect in this, but it was Tylenol or something. They were putting poison in it. I want to say I can't remember what poison they were using. Memories slipping here, but so people were dying. So people were, you go to your medicine cabinet, pop a couple of aspirin or Tylenol, and they were dying.
Did they know that what they were putting in it was?
It took a bit to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So people were dying, unexplainably, and it was cyanide, I believe. Anyway,
Did they know that that was going to kill people, or did they think, "Oh, this is just some filler we can throw in it"?
no, somebody was going around and they would take like Tylenol off the shelf, and at the time,
It wasn't the company; it was an individual doing that.
Yeah, they'd take Tylenol off the shelf, and at the time they didn't
shit.
They didn't have. That's what brought about the way they seal the caps on medicine now. It's got that foil that's melted on, and so when you pop it open, if that thing was open,
You wouldn't use it.
yeah, you wouldn't use it. Well, back then they didn't have that. You could open up a bottle of Tylenol. You could essentially go to the store, get the box of Tylenol, open the box up, pull the bottle out, take the cap off, and you'd have access to the Tylenol. Cap it all back up, put it back on the shelf, and nobody would know the difference because the seals are all, there weren't any, seals that had to be broken. And so that's what it was. So it took a bit, but then it was identified, and of course people stopped taking Tylenol. So issues like that, when we can identify where the problem is, I think from an economic standpoint, it's easy to recover.
Yeah.
Everybody says, "Oh God, don't buy Tylenol." The company decides we're going to change our packaging. Obviously, right? So that's what transpired. That's why you see the packaging different. As a matter of fact, for a time there, I think it was the time release capsule. So those time release capsules that you could pop open and pull the powder
Oh yeah,
out.
yeah.
Well, somebody was opening up those time release capsules, putting the cyanide or whatever poison was. I believe it was cyanide. Recapping it, putting it on the shelf. People were buying it.
Jesus.
And it was random, where this was happening. And so,
and how would you ever know?
Who
would think to check the Tylenol and be like,
yeah,
holy shit.
Yeah.
Did they ever? So obviously they caught the guy.
I want to say they did. God, that was decades ago. So I was pretty young then, but yeah, I don't know if they caught the guy but for sure it changed the industry.
Yeah.
And for the better. Unfortunately, people died over it, but Tylenol sales, of course, went in the toilet, but they were able to recover just simply by packaging. And I want to say they stopped making the capsules for a while. Went to like whatever other form they have. Yeah.
So you think that change, similar like how they put that little piece of plastic or whatever over the bottle, you think something similar is going to be implemented now because of the virus?
No.
Oh.
I'm just saying from the economic standpoint, it's easier to see, okay, that affected the economy or that particular industry.
To pinpoint it and then make a change.
You're able to recover from it much rapidly than if it's something unknown and uncertain. And obviously, if we don't have any kind of solid information on how to combat the COVID,
what do you do?
What do you do?
And have you heard that like the World Health Organization has been kind of helping China? Do you know if that's true? Have you heard that at all?
Well, helping in what sense? I mean,
in the sense that like they were maybe not necessarily covering up some of the information, but like playing along with the reports and stuff that China was putting out, kind of like backing them a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know they're independent agency, but can they be, influenced to a certain extent? Yeah, and China has a little bit more control over their press than we do here,
Absolutely.
So they're able to manipulate the numbers more. And
you can't sneeze without the government knowing in China.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll ever get, the accurate numbers that, we're striving for out of there. And is it that important that we do? Because it's affected the world.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the data that we can compile from the rest of the world, we can have a pretty good idea of where it's
what it
coming
looks
from.
like.
Yeah, what it looks like. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that they're not participating more in trying to, solve the issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hear now that they're really trying to, hack into a lot of the medical, research that's being done right now. That China's they're just hammering a lot of these institutions now that are doing the research.
They're trying to pull information.
They're trying to pull the information because obviously the big winner is going to be who comes up with a vaccine.
Yeah.
That's
You're going to need some serious change for that.
Yeah, right now that's the gold mine right now. So whoever can get it first, and so China recognizes that. So they're doing what they can with with whatever means possible to get a edge up.
Yeah, and China's not afraid to. I know that they, steal a lot of copyrighted stuff.
Yeah.
So who knows what they're doing
below
the surface?
And we're suckers in this country because we want the latest and greatest for the least amount. So where
do you get that from? China.
We're the perfect consumer.
Yeah.
So which is kind of ironic the relationship we have with China, because we're buying all these products from them, but yet we're giving them sanctions for other stuff. It almost seems
crazy.
Counterproductive. It's odd, but
well, and we're so self-righteous to some extent. We'd never have child labor here,
Right.
but we're totally okay with,
Right.
China doing it on the down low.
Go down to the San Joaquin Valley and see all the immigrants picking our vegetables and
Right.
fruit.
You don't have a problem with that. But
Yeah.
when you think about it, they're like, no, that's not okay.
Yeah.
But then you want that new iPhone every year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. So, yeah, where the answer is, I don't know. Trying.
Yeah. How do you solve that?
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of crazy to think that in 2020, right, we've got so much access to information. I mean, it's at your fingertips constantly. It's online. Anything you want to know about, it might not always be true. You can find differing opinions and stuff. But then you go to like North Korea or you go to China and you've got extremely limited access. And that's happening today. Like, right? I mean, doesn't that blow your mind when you think about it a little bit?
It's hard to imagine, huh?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine. And how they're fed information. And that's frightening at times, how people can be brainwashed like that, and led to believe,
essentially anything.
Yeah, anything essentially. And it could be completely wrong.
Yeah. Tying into that, I mean, we kind of get that to some extent with sensational journalism. I know we kind of talked about that a little bit outside of the podcast, but
I think we are more than ever now. If you're not careful, if you're not checking your sources where you're getting your information, I think, I mean, and that touches back to what we were talking about social media. If you're getting all your information off of social media, and as you know, all the tracking that's being done and all the information that's getting gathered and how they can target advertising just specifically for what you've shown an interest in. And I don't think people, or the vast majority of people, realize how easily and they are being manipulated.
Do you think the day of being able to just watch the nightly news and just have that be your sole stream of information, do you think those days are gone if you want to maintain like an unbiased view?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have to be a little bit more proactive, and not only watch, CNN or some of these other broadcasts, and Fox sways one way, CNN sways the other, and but I think especially now with the internet, there are positives there where you can actually watch a news broadcast from a different country, which gives you an entirely different perspective. I think that should be part of the whole journey in this, in the search for knowledge of what's truly happening in the world, is to gather your information and the news information that you read and watch from places outside of this country as well. Because, as if you've ever done that, there's a completely different perspective when that news is coming from Europe, or, wherever it might be, South America or wherever that might be. You're going to get a different perspective about how they're viewing us and things that we're doing that are affecting them that you never hear about here.
Absolutely.
So I think, if a person really wants to be proactive and really wants to get a good feel for what's truly happening, is to diversify the information you get and where you get it from.
Yeah, but then the problem is how many people actually want to take the time to do that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Everybody's lazy.
It's easy just to watch the latest pop up on your phone and see what's going on.
Yep. That's the problem, is it's too easy.
Yeah.
Get that Facebook notification. Oh, such and such is happening, and you're like, oh shit. And then the problem is you take that and run. I've done that. You hear a story and then you go and you tell like 10 people, and then you tell the 11th person, and they're like, oh, that didn't happen. And you're like, ah, shit. I just told 10 other people that, this is all going down. And they're like, no, that's fake. Like, and then what do? You don't reach back out to those 10 people and be like, hey, sorry, this is all fake. Just ignore what I said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
Too many people running around with misinformation.
Yeah.
That can lead to some crazy decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If everybody has different information, then how do you ever find the truth?
Yeah.
No, I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Because you can't have like a localized source of information where everyone can go to, and if I go to gng.net, that's the news, and that's unbiased. That's just a global opinion of what is happening, and you can look at that and be like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
We don't. And I think that's I think it's important to recognize and make attempts to get your information from other sources, not just
Yeah.
one.
And today, I know what I wanted to say. There was back to the social media thing. Today is almost the worst time ever to be a hunter, right? Because you
Right.
post one picture of yourself with a deer and you can kiss it all goodbye.
It's all over, Johnny.
Right? I mean, isn't that?
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
something that's been going on for so long. I mean, we could trace our roots back to when we started hunting.
Yeah.
And then
now it's yeah, especially if you're a big game hunter, and
yeah. Then it gets real dicey.
yeah, you can you can lose your job. You can yeah. There was some executive that was just hired and fired because of that.
Oh yeah, you were talking about that.
Yeah,
He went to
he was a big game hunter, and I think went to Africa or something. Maybe shot a lion or a gazelle or something. Had to have something with some impact, probably a lion or something.
Yeah.
It was a it was a licensed hunt. But boy, it sure had some backlash because I want to say this industry was all about pro environment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was hired and fired within a week. So
Jesus.
yeah.
Do you think it's the act of? Because I wondered this, if it's more the act of posting it, because normally when you're posting a picture with, the deer or whatever, you're kind of smiling because you put in a lot of work to get there, presumably. Maybe
Right.
not so much with like a big game hunt, but do you think that that's why people get so pissed? Is because you're kind of taking pride in, the act of killing something?
No, I think people have their own opinions, and what you and I do might be differently, than somebody else, and they think it's, I suppose if you're, a vegetarian, then everybody that eats meat is, a heathen of some sort,
Yeah.
So, and then of course it's just because, as we're talking about, the exposure and the lack of privacy and our willingness to put our personal lives out there, that we're subjecting ourselves to that,
Yeah.
it was before that if somebody went on a big game hunt, you'd go to their house to see the mount, and it was just the group of people that knew you that would come over to your house.
Yeah, you're not inviting strangers.
right? You're not inviting strangers. But now you take a couple of photos of you with all these, big game mounts you've got behind you, and it goes worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to expect some pushback. Not everybody agrees with what you're doing, and nor will they ever. You know what I mean? We all have diverse interests and diverse reasons why we're doing it, and of course we all feel we're right.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just that, it's having all that exposure and the consequences of that, having all that out there.
I wonder if people tried it and went out and like experienced all the work that goes into it and how long you're out there in the grind, and then the joy that you experience. I wonder if people would change their perception of a little bit. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to say, it's easy to make comments on something that you don't have any experience with. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I've never talked to like somebody who actively hunts and is like, yeah, this is wrong. You know what I mean? Obviously they're biased because they do it, but I wonder if it would change perspectives if you did it.
Well, and I think people also change too, because I've talked to people who were hunters, maybe not necessarily, the larger big game hunters, but maybe deer hunters that have let it go for different reasons, kind of their perspective changed. A lot of people that would do, guided hunts now, I think, used to kind of attract me. They don't so much anymore because it's, you load up in the rig, they take you where the
Kind of takes
animal's
the
at,
joy out of it.
they point out where the animal's at, and then you fire off around on a high powered rifle. Where's the sport in that?
Yeah.
And I enjoy hunting. So
yeah,
there you have it. There's that there's that extreme. I even in the same sport that I enjoy doing, if you can call it a sport, I have various opinions on. Yeah.
I think I might be a little biased too, in the sense that when we would go hunting, like I've only ever experienced going out on public land, and you gotta bust your ass. You're walking,
Yeah.
like 8-12 miles a day, walking, trying to find deer. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So that's all I've ever experienced. And in my mind, that's probably the most humane way to get meat. You know what I mean? Is
Yeah.
going out there and hunting for it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're buying it from a grocery store where they're all crammed into little crates and
Right.
But
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, not a lot of people do it to begin with. I think the hunting community is pretty small to start off.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it's changed a lot. I think the deer population has dropped a lot. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I think there are less and less hunters than there were before. But there's still traditional families that have grown up hunting and it's a big part of what they do. So and I understand that.
Yeah, and location-wise, too. If
It's-
you're in
it's-
Alaska, I mean,
It's not for everybody.
yeah,
Um,
nothing really is,
but
right?
yeah. But I don't know. It's hard to just pass judgment over that when, if they're not trophy hunting, essentially just shooting it for the the horns,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. They're also eating the meat and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. So
Yeah, and I've heard the argument for, I don't really know how I feel about trophy hunting yet. But I've heard arguments that like that kind of supports the preservation of a lot of these animals, is letting certain hunts occur during certain times, because you obviously have to thin the population regardless if they're close to communities and stuff, and by doing that you actually pay for preservation.
yeah,
Right. So I mean, that almost makes it seem like a good thing, because
yeah, there is that that argument, because some of these hunts, or some of these African hunts, you can spend some pretty big bucks doing it.
yeah,
And that is the argument, that those proceeds are, are used to preserve, the existing wildlife. And there might be something to that,
mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that there isn't, but I get it.
Yeah. How did you start hunting? Did you and Lito go out?
No, with friends, that were hunters,
Mm-hmm.
and then Paul, our brother-in-law.
Oh yeah, he's a big hunter.
Yeah, he's a pretty avid hunter. We would go out of state and hunt in Utah and stuff like that. So, yeah, the experience was fun. Like when you and I would go hunting.
Yeah.
I enjoyed just getting out there and
Just being in the outdoors,
being in the
walking
outdoors,
around and talking with you. It's fun.
trekking around in the woods, and,
Yeah.
that whole experience, just like fishing, sometimes it's not about catching the fish. It's just about the experience of being out there and enjoying time with somebody, you like. And yeah.
That's an interesting point. Nobody ever gets pissed that you're out fishing, right? You could post a picture of you with a bass and PETA's not gunning down for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. And I don't know what that stems from,
I think
but
it's the
you're right.
emotional attachment, right? Because you see a lion and you're like, oh man, it's majestic. It's this creation. It's so cool. And then you see a fish and it's just like, yeah, well, you can have a pet fish. You can't really have a pet lion. I mean, you might in Texas. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's almost like your emotional connection to an animal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think of that, but you're right. I can't think of anybody getting all pissed off about catching a fish.
Right? Even sport fishing, you can go out and catch whatever. I mean, a marlin.
Yeah, what about that big 9-foot, blue marlin you caught in Cabo? So,
well, I don't know. I never posted a picture of that on Instagram, so who knows if
maybe you ought to run a test.
Yeah.
Post a picture of that and see
how
what
many
kind
people
of
get pissed.
pushback you get.
Yeah. But I mean, stuff like that, like you don't really think about it. You don't really bat an eye about that.
Yeah.
But big game hunts in Africa, you get some pushback.
Yeah.
Like you can lose your job for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And and people threaten your life. And
that's the craziest thing
Yeah.
is people you don't even know, not even just in the sense of hunting, but for anything. Like if you put something out there are, chances are people are going to come at you and want to kill you. Like you hear stories all the time about people putting something out there and then they get death threats.
Yeah.
And it's like, how you don't even know this person and you're threatening to kill them? Like, and I get a lot of it is just them blowing smoke out of their ass, but like.
So I'm going to have to ask you to when you edit this thing to let me see it, because I surely don't want any death throes.
No, this thing's
On
going
any
out just how it is. If I'm going down, you're coming down with me. We're a team.
Any of the topics we touched
Yeah,
on.
I mean, yeah.
Because you never know. I mean, you might rub somebody the wrong way, you know. So.
Well, you could, like you said earlier, you can say anything, and odds are there's going to be a few people out there that just take it and run the opposite direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Take it out of context
Yeah,
or whatever.
what do you do?
Yeah.
You're just not going to talk. I think that's another problem is a lot of the times you can't have these difficult conversations because you say something, somebody gets offended, and that ends the conversation. Like, you can't work through a topic anymore.
Right.
You
You
know
have to
what I
be a
mean?
little bit more guarded because you surely don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you can only have topics with close friends, and odds are most of the time you're probably going to have similar views, or you know what I mean? Like, you can't just go up and talk to somebody and be like, oh, what do you think about abortion? What do you think about gun laws? Like, that can ruin friendships if you talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or political, you know, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's what they say. You don't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table, right?
Right. Start some heated arguments.
Yeah, people get pissed. I think I've heard people say that it's because everyone gets so attached to their ideas.
Yeah.
You know, I think something, I'm right, I know I'm right, and you're trying to tell me something that I know is wrong, so I don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
But how do you grow if you live your life like that?
You got to be open.
All right. Well, I think we just did some serious time on the podcast.
What time do we do?
I think we did about, I think we're close to 2 hours.
Oh, wow. I hate to cut it off, but I got a flight.
No, I know. I've been trying to be cognizant of the time. Oh, we did an hour and 16, which is pretty damn good.
That's cool.
All right.
I'm good with that.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you,
I had
sir.
I had a
What
really good
blast.
time.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing it.
I'm excited for you to
Cool.
come back on.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, bud.